What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and let's talk about this new clarification post from D&D Beyond regarding what's going on with the 2024 D&D Beyond rule set. So if you've been following anything in the world of tabletop, but specifically Dungeons and Dragons over the past day, you'll know that a lot of people are really upset and up in arms about the changes that are happening to D&D Beyond when the 2024 Player's Handbook rolls out in just under 2 weeks at this point. So we got an article clarifying how things are going to kind of be sorted into. Some things will be sorted into legacy tags, where like the current version is just listed as like barbarian, or they'll be like barbarian legacy, which would be your 2014 version. And all of that was well and good until everybody got to spells and magic items, and were basically told those are going to be overwritten with the 2024 version of all of the spells. Now, granted, it's not all the spells. That's something else I want to point out. It is all the spells in this book. There are several spells that are not in this book that will remain in their 2014 version. It is largely everything you had in the 2014 Player's Handbook with a couple of extra additions. Also, I have not read every single spell down to the letter. I've skimmed 90% of them at this point. I will also tell you that a lot of them aren't changing. A lot of them are staying fundamentally the same as they were in 2014. Now, are some changing? Yes. Some of them have gotten infinitely better in many ways. Others are basically a gutted version of their former self, i.e., Counterspell. And I'll say this up front before we even dive into this. If you're worried about your 2014 spells, the biggest one I'll say you probably should go make a homebrew one of is Counterspell, and maybe Spiritual Weapon if you can't forget that it wasn't concentration before and now it is. Counterspell is probably the one you're gonna want to save. I'll just throw that out there. That's the one that has the biggest change, in my opinion. The biggest fundamental change in how the spell works, I should say. All right. So that being said, all of that, everybody's upset because they paid for this content, and now they're not going to have access to that content. Well, you will, but maybe not in the way you want. And we're going to dive into this clarification article that was just released only a couple minutes ago on D&D Beyond. So, yesterday we released a changelog. Let's class some clarifications. 2014 core rulebook or rulebook compendiums. Players will not lose access to their 2014 content in the compendium. The 2014 content will continue to be accessible on the D&D Beyond site and available for purchase after the release of the 2024 core rulebook. The information in them will remain unchanged, and players will not lose access to any of their 2014 content. So right there, that's a net positive. However, it's probably not what you think. So this over here, this is the compendium, right? What you see right here, where you have all of the stuff from 2014. So if I want to go to my spells and I want to look up grease and see grease that is not specified that the grease is not flammable, I can go ahead and scroll down to grease, and there it is. Okay? That's the compendium. I have access to that regardless. Now, consider that it does not say that you'll have access to that in the character sheet, but you will still have access to that content, so your usage of it for reference and otherwise is unimpeded, although it may not be accessible in the character sheet, at least so far. Free rules. Now, again, if you're unfamiliar, if you were to scroll up to the top here, that there is also free rules, which is essentially, or the basic rules, right? These are essentially the rules that are available in Creative Commons, which gives you all the base versions of the classes with one subclass and a pretty decent amount of spells and things of that nature, right? So they go on to say, we will be releasing D&D Free Rules 2024, covering similar content as the 2014 Free Basic Rules, with more details to come pending the release of the Player's Handbook. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to launch on the same day as the Player's Handbook, and we have heard that the SRD 5.2 will be updated sometime in February or after the 2024 core rulebooks have been released. Perhaps the Free Rules 2024 will be out sooner, we just don't know. Players will not need to buy the 2024 core rulebooks to access the free rules. They are, in fact, free rules, so everybody will have access. The free rules will not require an account or purchase to user view, so you can just, even if you're in an incognito tab or you have no access to D&D Beyond at all, you can still view the free 2024 rules with no issues. Content that was free in the 2014 free basic rules will remain free, right? They're not going to charge you for the old content. You can have the new one and the old one, access to both. You'll have that when the free D&D rules 2024 are released. It says we will also add new spells and feats to the D&D free rules 2024. Well, I'll tell you that the D&D free rules 2014, at least on the D&D Beyond website, has no feats at all. So that's going to be more, and probably some of the additional spells that were added will be in this. Okay, spells. Now this is the thing that got everybody really upset. When updated, spell descriptions on character sheets will default to the 2024 rulebook descriptions. All users, regardless of whether they have purchased the 2024 Player's Handbook, will be able to access these updated spells for free if they previously purchased the 2014 Player's Handbook. So all of the things are going to default to the 2024 description. If you have the 2014 Player's Handbook, you have access to the 2024 spell changes for free. And then it goes on to state that all 2014 versions of spells will still be accessible in the D&D Beyond compendium and available for players to access. Notice that it says up here, spell descriptions on character sheets, and here it says compendium. So again, I think if you were to go search spells on the compendium and scroll down to your source, you'll see things like Player's Handbook 2014, which you can't probably see because it's right above my head. Player's Handbook 2014, or when it's available, Player's Handbook 2024, which again, if you bought the 2014 Player's Handbook, you'll now have access to all of those spells for free. Going on to discuss magic items, all users, regardless of whether they've purchased the 2024 core rulebooks, will be able to access the updated magic items for free if they have previously purchased the 2014 Player's Handbook. So you're going to get access to the magic items for free as well without having to purchase the Dungeon Master's Guide, as long as you bought the 2014 Player's Handbook. And it goes on to state that only 2 magic items are impacted by the 2024 update with minor changes to their text, the Potion of Healing and the Spell Scroll. Again, the Potion of Healing, as we've talked about in the past, is now a bonus action to drink and administer, and I believe the language that was added for Spell Scroll is if you're casting a spell that's not on your spell list, it has like a set DC and attack roll. This is a 2014 versions of these magic items will still be accessible in the D&D Beyond compendium. We will evaluate the upcoming changes to other magic items with the release of the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. The way I read that is when they say we will evaluate, is there's a potential that they won't update the magic items, or they might go into the legacy tag. Now, I don't know the back end of the programming of any of this kind of stuff. I am familiar with the concept of kind of what we're seeing. I'm a Destiny player, as many of you know, so I'm very familiar with the concept of sunsetting, which is to make room on the servers and whatever to optimize things. The parent company just ditches old content in favor of new content, and we all saw that with the Lost of the Red War campaign with the installment of sunsetting in Destiny 2. It seems like a similar thing. You're going to get forcibly updated to the 2024 rules, whether you like it or not, at least for spells and magic items. Now, I do also think that it's weird that that's the sticking point, because we're going to get legacy tags for basically everything else except for spells and magic items. We're just going to be forced into using the new stuff. And I'll be honest, I've looked, like I said, most of the spells are the same. A couple were buffed, a couple were nerfed, but in the grand scheme, a lot of these are very similar, if not identical, to their 2014 versions. So a video that I'm going to make in the future is I'm going to do my best to alleviate you can feel however you want to feel about the business practice here. And it is odd that you pick and chose what got legacy tags and what didn't. I think if everything had the option for legacy tags, we wouldn't be in this situation. If you could have legacy versions of all the spells and legacy versions of all the magic items, I think everybody would be over the moon. And if you gave everybody the option to pick the character sheet that they want to use, because I think the current character sheet for 2024 is atrocious. I cannot stand it. I hate the design. I don't like the way things are organized. It just seems harder to use to me. Now, maybe I'm just an old set in my ways 5e player that I'm used to things looking a certain way, but I hate when you put the skills coupled in like directly underneath the ability scores. I like my skills to be in a little bar. I always have. But I don't know. That would be the biggest, most egregious issue that I have is if they force update all of your characters to the 2024 character sheet, which that we have not truly heard about. But I think the distinction is clear. The content that you bought, you'll still have access to, but it seems like you probably won't be able to utilize that in the character builder. It seems like that's going to be relegated to the new content. And then it goes on to say for partnered content, we've been working with our partners ahead of these changes to ensure that their content will remain compatible with D&D Beyond's updates. Our partners have made amazing content that we are proud to have on D&D Beyond. We will continue to work to create compatibility. So there you go, folks. Again, probably, like I said, not the answer a lot of you were hoping for when we got, you're still not losing the content. It's still available. It's like, yes, it's available, but it's not available in the character builder, which seems like that's exactly what most people end up using it for. So I don't know. I'm curious, right? You can obviously still continue to use your physical books. They can't take your 2014 Player's Handbook away from you if you really want to use something like that. So I'm just scrolling through to see if there's been any updates to that thread from somebody at D&D Beyond. It looks like it's mostly just users commenting back and forth on the forum. No actual updates from Watsy or the D&D Beyond team, at least from what I can tell. But yeah, I mean, obviously, you're going to feel and have your opinions about how this works. On face value, I actually like a lot of the updates to the spells. I'd say the majority of them, again, Counterspell being one of the ones that is drastically different from its previous form. But I feel like a lot of the spell updates, at least the ones that I've seen and kind of read specifically, are generally improvements, in my opinion. Again, it's my opinion, and you could feel very differently about that. I saw a lot of people commenting that they think that what changes were made to sleep are huge nerfs. I also consider, like, outside of maybe levels 1 to 3, I don't think I've ever used sleep in a campaign past level 3. Because at that point, it's a crapshoot when you're rolling that many dice to try to do anything cool. So, that's one aspect. But yeah, we'll see. It seems like they might be backpedaling on the Dungeon Master's Guide thing, potentially, from what we saw where they'll evaluate the Dungeon Master's Guide. Like I said, if you just had legacy tags for everything, I think nobody would be upset. It's interesting that you chose certain things, but not everything. And then ultimately, this may or may not be what you want to hear, but I'm going to say it. If you don't like the changes, just either play a different game or don't use D&D Beyond. And I recognize that that's extremely difficult to say and hear because I am a D&D channel and I do use D&D Beyond quite a bit. So that would be a huge blow to me, and I know that a lot of folks end up using it just for the pure convenience of character building, or, sometimes that's the only way people know what they can do because the character sheet has the clickable options for bonus actions, what have you. But that being said, you maybe switch virtual tabletops, right? I believe Roll20, and I don't know this with certainty, but from the response posts that I saw from some folks in the virtual tabletop space, it appears like people like Roll20 will let you choose 2014, 2024, and it lets you do both of those inside one person's campaign. Like you can use 2014, I can use 2024. It seems to let you choose the character sheet you want to use. And like I said, if they update us to this garbage 2024 character sheet on D&D Beyond, that is going to be that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back, in my opinion, on D&D Beyond usage, because it's so clean, the UI for the character sheet right now, to go in and change that. I don't know. It seems like that's a pretty big, that would be a pretty bad move, in my opinion. So I keep things how they are. And just let us update. Because also with the tabs and things, the D&D Beyond character sheet pseudo replicates a actual 2014 character sheet, but with the tabs, you click through different things. It's a little bit different. It's a digitized version. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll stay on top of this if any additional news comes out in the future about this. I also want to say, hey, we got an answer in 24 hours, which is very unlike the WotC we know of the past, who was willing to let us hang out for a week and be out to dry for a week during the OGL situation. Another thing that I'm going to do to try and alleviate some of your concern. It's a big project, and I don't know how long it's going to take. Ideally, I'll be able to do it in the next couple days. But formulate a list of every spell that is in this book, and then that way you know what spells are going to be updated when the 2024 rules drop. So if you want to make homebrew versions of those spells to keep the old version, then you'll have that list and you can go from there. But I also, if I have the time, want to take that list and then do the side-by-side comparison and say, okay, Acid Splash unchanged or Fireballs unchanged. So, like, you're not losing out on that. Whereas, I might be like, Counterspell, drastically different. Divine Favor, hey, now it's not concentration and it used to be. That's a general improvement. So, I'm hoping that I can do as much as I can with that to alleviate a lot of everyone's concern. Also, to limit your work. Because if you're going to be in there creating homebrew versions of every 2014 spell so you have access to those, I'd like to give you what ones you should be doing so that you're not wasting your time doing this for every single spell, knowing that a large majority of them aren't going to be updated. And also, I will say that that's a presumption on my part. My presumption is that the 2024 Player's Handbook spells are the only spells that are going to be updated. But who knows? They might grab the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything spells. Now, there's some spells that were in Xanathar's Guide or Tasha's that made their way in here, a handful of them. But there are several that didn't. For example, I can think of Tasha's Caustic Brew off the top of my head. It's not in the 2024 Player's Handbook. Will that be updated to be the 2024 version of it? Or will that wait until that spell arrives in a future book? Or is this a truly backwards compatible situation where that spell doesn't change? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll see you all next time.